How did you actually end up becoming known as like the law master?
don't think I advocated for it. I think that's a good question. I mean, we were obviously pretty small back when I was hired. It may have something to do with, right? I started working there at the end of Daggerfall.
Yep.
Worked there through the beginning of, well, through most of Redguard. Went away for, I don't remember how long, 3 years maybe, and then came back. So when I came back, I was, I had a history there. I had, been around. I was one of the people that had been there, at least from the design point of view, the longest, at least from, they were, I don't know that we had anybody else except for Todd on the design side that was still working there that had worked on Daggerfall. Um, so maybe because of that, I mean, I was always, very involved in the lore, and I don't know if it ever, I mean, it may have started as kind of an informal thing of like, let's ask Kurt. He knows, like, he's really familiar with this stuff, or maybe he wrote that. um, and then at some point it became, I think when it became sort of quasi official was when ZOS was founded and they were working on us, another group of people, another team was working on an Elder Scrolls game. And so Todd wanted to have somebody in house that could sort of field their questions or review their content for lore. And so it was very quasi official, though. It was never, it was never an official title. It was just sort of
You're the guy.
what I sort of took on.
But are you able to actually retain everything from the law? Or would
Oh,
people
no.
ask you a question? Yeah, so they'd ask you a question, you'd go away, find the information, and come back.
Yes, I'm sure there are many people, especially in the fans, that know the lore better
Oh,
than I do, right? Like,
100%.
especially given, we would go away from the Elder Scrolls for years and years at a time working on other projects. So I would, I wasn't living and breathing it day in and day out when we weren't working on a Elder Scrolls game. And obviously also even when working on a game, a lot of what you're doing isn't lore. It's just the
Yeah.
nuts and bolts of making the game, or, system design or whatever. It doesn't have anything to do with the lore. So yeah, I wasn't like living in the lore. I think there are probably people at other studios or places that have IP where the lore master is probably maybe a full-time job. I don't know. Um, it probably could have been or should have been, but we didn't have the staff for that. So, uh, yeah, but, I relied on the fan sites, like
Oh, really?
UESP, Imperial Library, because they would compile everything. Um, and what we did have, we tried to have an internal lore site. And, I mean, we had one, but like many things like that, we didn't have anyone dedicated to maintaining it. So it was, we'd work on it and we'd get it up to date. And then, we wouldn't have time to work on it for years, and it would sort of languish and new things wouldn't have been added or whatever. But the people on the fan sites, um, they were always keeping things up to date. So those were my initial go-to. Not because, I mean, it's right. If I'm looking up like a book, you look quizzical, but they had all the lore. Like, it was taken from the games. It wasn't like they wrote it. But if I wanted to look at what did the various books say, well, they had them easily accessible. We may have had them somewhere, but it was easier to look it up on UESP. Or if I wanted to get like a quick rundown of like, what did this quest in Daggerfall do? Well, we didn't have that at all. Like, we didn't. I don't know that we had any information from like our records. The internal, like, what I guess it was a wiki, went back to Oblivion, but stuff from previous. We probably had the text of the books because we had them in the editor and we could put them in, but the data from the Morrowind quests or Daggerfall quests, we didn't have that anymore. I couldn't. It was not easy to pull that up. I didn't just have Morrowind installed on my computer and I could just pull up the editor and look at it. So it was much, and even if I could, that would have been a very uh, cumbersome way to like figure out what went on in, say, a Morrowind quest, right? Like I could look on UESP, they would have it all like laid out.
It's good that
And
you're able to elaborate on that because I think there's this perception that you were just the Bible and that you retained everything, um, and everyone would come to you and you'd just know it straight off the bat.
to me, the actual more the role was it wasn't because anyone could do that, right? Anyone could look it up. You didn't need me to do that. It was more for new stuff. That's to me what I saw was, does this fit? Should we add this, or does this contradict something? That's a bit harder to come by, and it's much more of a judgment call, right? Like if we're doing a new thing, should we do it? Does it does it fit with the vibe of Elder Scrolls? Does it maybe, you know, maybe we wanted to not answer that question. Maybe we want to keep that open. That was also a lot of it was we were avoid answering questions or, if there was, lore that was like open that it could have been this, that, or the other thing. It was better not to answer that question until we had to. Like if we needed to answer that question because we were putting it in one of our games, then we would answer the question. But there's no
Right.
reason just to write a book that answers that question unrelated to the game if you didn't have to, because you never know when you might need the, room to maneuver when you want to make something in the future. And you're like, damn it, I wish we hadn't said that like 5 years ago because
Yeah.
we would have liked to be able to do the other thing.